On our team this year we have Mary Gray. Mary Gray is the president of United States Driving for the Disabled.
Hi, I'm Mary Gray, and I'm from Maine. I started riding as a child. I had polio when I was 9, and after I got out of the hospital, I discovered, much to my chagrin, that I could no longer ride my bicycle. So I announced to one and all that I would ride a horse instead. And nobody really thought I could do that, I think. But my parents were very supportive. A little nervous, but very supportive.
Then we have Diane Kastama from Southern California, who has been on our last team 2 years ago in Graven in Germany.
I'm Diane Kastama. In '91 I was in a car accident which left me paralyzed, and a year later I actually got back on the horse and rode. I rode for a couple years, and then someone mentioned driving, and I thought, oh, that'd be kind of fun, so I bought, a $90 nylon harness out of, the catalog, and shopped garage sales and found this cart, hooked my 14-year-old gelding.
Next on our team we have Jean Hackberg. Jean is also from California, as Diane is.
I'm from Raymond, California. It's a little small town about an hour south of Yosemite National Park. I work full-time. That's the only way I can afford to do it. I actually work at a resort, and actually I work 50 to 60-hour weeks on top of working my horse out 4 days a week. Usually on the weekends I take them out for long workouts. Then Tuesdays and Thursdays I get up at 5 o'clock and drive before I go to work.
Then we have on our team Pam Johnson.
My name is Pam Johnson. I'm from Pleasant Hill, Missouri. I was doing pretty well at the combined training thing with this big thoroughbred horse I had, and I started falling off of him. And there goes the coaches. And so I had a clue that I had sclerosis, but it didn't really bother me too bad until I started falling off a little more than I thought I should be.
We have Michael Muir, a pair driver.
My name is Michael Muir. I'm living most recently in Fairfield, California. I've been a horseman all my life. I started breeding horses when I was 12 years old. And when I was 15, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I was profoundly affected at that time. I was paralyzed below the neck, and I had a recovery period of about 6 months to get back to what they call my baseline. And I had an untroubled view, really, with MS. But over time, my life with horses began to be affected by MS, and I was no longer able to ride by the time I reached my 40th birthday. That's what really, being a lifelong horseman, you can't ride. What do? I turned to carriage driving.
Mary Wolverton is from Colorado.
I'm Mary Wolverton, and I presently live in Elizabeth, Colorado. It was a little bit of a slow process, but I had a stroke during some 10 hours of back surgery 4 years ago, and woke up and didn't have much use of my legs. And, my balance is gone. So I don't ride anymore. I've been riding all my life and been teaching kids for 30 years.
I met Diane many years ago in Southern California at a driving event where I saw her mucking her stall out of a wheelchair, and that took me. Since then I have every now and then given Diane some driving lessons, and from each lesson that I come home I maybe helped her a little bit to become a better driver. Maybe she learned a little bit. But I can tell you, I learned a lot about life in each of these lessons.
She doesn't think she's anything out of the ordinary, and everyone we meet that she meets thinks she's extraordinary.
And she doesn't see herself that way, which I think is really interesting.
Gene came up with his wheelchair leading his horse, and I looked around whether I would find an able-bodied person to jog the horse. Is there anybody here that can trot the horse in front of us? And Gene says, oh no, I do that. And he did it out of his hand-powered wheelchair, trotting his horse for the horse inspection.
The support of my friends, my family, my co-workers has been amazing. From day one, from when I said that this is something that I have chosen to do and I got accepted, the support's been there. Everything has gone very smoothly. That's just been incredible.
Gene was born. The doctors told me to treat him like a normal child, and that's been our goal the whole time he was growing up. And we just looked at doing things a little different. You know, if you can't make it up the steps, you figure out how you can make it up there.
And you forget after a while. He seems so able-bodied. I totally admire him, and yet he hates that. He doesn't want to be admired. He just wants to be Gene. That's it. You know? So this whole experience has been difficult for him in a different kind of way. Where it was hard to get here physically, it was harder emotionally to admit he's disabled. Doesn't like the term. He doesn't feel disabled.
Pam has MS. To the outside, it's not as visible that how big her disability is. Whereas with Diane or Gene, both of them being in a wheelchair, you see right away, yes. But there are many people with different level of disabilities.
No. When I found out I had multiple sclerosis, it was kind of, oh no, what can I do now? You know, and you just have to think, what can I do now? Not what can't I do anymore. And when God closes the door, he opens a window. And I got a picture window that he opened for me, because I wouldn't have done this if it weren't for that. And I'm not saying, oh, I like having multiple sclerosis, but it could be worse. I live a blessed life.
You can't tell the difference. Once a person is driving a vehicle, you can go anywhere. I mean, you look even here amongst the 5 of us who are here. Probably there isn't any of us that could go out and walk more than a mile to get out into the woods, or climb the hills and get out into the woods. We've just been out for a drive that probably was 7 miles up and down through the hills, through the woods, over the sand dunes, and had no difficulty with that. I mean, there was no difference between the drivers who were trying out for the disabled team or the riders who were able-bodied and came from the area. I mean, everybody was going on the same path at the same speed and doing the same thing.
Mary's a very special individual. She's given a lot of her life to making things better for individuals with disabilities, and the fact that she is now disabled is something that nobody would want, but she still continues to be quite a supporter of the sports for individuals with disabilities. And that's something I think that's admirable in anybody.
Michael has made a name for himself in driving a horse-drawn journey across America from the West Coast to the east to Washington, D.C.
We traveled across the country for 10 months, visiting schools and hospitals along the way, and showing the world that disability does not mean inability, that you face your challenges, you rise up against your challenges, and you can still accomplish amazing things. I would just ask people to imagine what it's like to live your life, to have the boundaries of your life defined by a wheelchair. You know, if you're able-bodied, imagine what it's like, the obstacles that you face to a sense of freedom by being wheelchair-bound. And we want to gather as much support as possible for this sport, because imagine the liberating feeling to get into a carriage, to take the reins of a horse, and to get out into the world and roll. You know, it opens up an exhilarating sense of freedom that it's such an enriching thing to my life. I want to share it with more people. That's why I'm like a missionary on the road.
To myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.